All right, guys. I have my sleeves rolled up for this lecture because this is a big deal. This is the part of the course where I see majority of people get stuck. If you often go to programmers, they will say nested loops is the part of the course where I absolutely hated it, and till this day I still do not understand nested loops. I mean, I try my best to understand it. Even for me, I think that was the same issue for me. I kind of understood nested loops, but I didn't understand it the way that I'm going to explain it to you. That's because my teacher, they haven't actually they actually skipped these parts of when talking about nested loops, which I feel like people absolutely need to hear. So I'll just give you everything about nested loops, and I'll tell you you should actually review this because it's a big deal. So nested loops, as you already guessed it, is a loop inside a loop. That's why it's called nested. For example, see I have this loop right here, and what does this loop do? This loop runs how many times? One, two, three. As you can see, that's what we talked about the last couple of videos. It just runs three times. Now, here's the interesting fact. Let's just say I had this. See how I print it out? See how I am trying to run a loop inside a loop? Remember how I said a loop could do whatever you want as many times as you want? You could have anything inside a loop. You could have variables declared. You could print out something multiple times. You could process a file. You could process a database. Whatever you want, a loop could do that. You could do whatever you want inside a loop. But now here's the interesting fact. If I try to compile this, we can see it says variable I is already defined in method loops. Hopefully, if you remember, I don't remember what number lecture was, but the lecture on parameters, in which the parameter videos, I talked about, in one of those videos, I talked about scope, and we talked about how scope of a variable, whenever you get this error message, variable is already defined in the method. Just know that you are using a variable. Again, the same variable, the same name. Again, we talked about you can't have the same variable and the same name declared inside the same scope. In this case, we have a variable I. In this case, the compiler is complaining about line 10. It's saying that you are initializing a new variable. Again, remember how loops go: initialization, a test, and an update. In this case, I am declaring a variable I, which I already declared inside the same scope. And what's that scope? The scope is right here, this curly brace right here, from line 9 to 13. From line 9 to 13, anywhere inside of there, no matter if it's inside a loop, no matter if I declare it explicitly, like if I declare it out here, int I equals something, I know that I cannot have the same variable name twice. Why is this important? This is important because majority of the people, they don't really understand what scope is. I mean, they did if they probably have, but they don't understand how scope is related to loops. The idea is when you're declaring a variable inside a loop, whatever is inside the parentheses has nothing to do with, oh, it's only available inside that parentheses. The variable you are declaring, the declaration is, think of it like this. You're actually writing int I equals 1. You're actually writing it right here. You're actually writing it right here. And then let's say you had another method, I don't know, whatever you want. You're basically declaring it again whenever you have a loop inside a loop. Essentially what you're doing is whenever you're inside line 9 to 13, whenever you declare a variable, this is where the variable declaration begins, meaning from line 9 to 13, you can't have the variable reused again. No matter if it's inside a loop again, you're declaring a new loop, or if you actually define it here, you define it here. Let's just say I change this to a different name. I say like int j, int j, int j, and I try to compile this. It will complain line 11, variable I is already declared. As long as you are from line 9 to 13, you cannot reuse the variable I again. Same thing goes with j. Whenever you're inside the scope from 10 to 12, which j starts from, again, how I got this is I just hovered over the curly brace and it told me where that loop ends. I can't have a variable declared j. So, for example, I can't say int j equals 40. I can't reuse that variable. That's because it already told me variable j is already defined in the method loops because I already declared int j. So, hopefully, that's the first stages in which you learn loops, is that whatever loop you have, the curly brace that's contained inside of it will be the start of a declaration of a variable, and you cannot reuse that variable no matter if you have it contained inside a loop, or if you have it already defined somewhere else, or if it's already defined inside the loop and it's contained in a bigger loop, it will not work as long as it's variables are the same name. So that's just the idea of just revisiting scope again. That's the whole idea why we covered scope and why we spent a good chunk of our time talking about that. Because here it comes into play here because the scope is actually defined here, and this is the beginning stages of where people crumble on nested loops if they don't actually understand scope and how it works. But hopefully this video served as a mini introduction to nested loops. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you for more videos on nested loops, and we'll definitely dig deep into the stages of nested loops as we move forward. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I will see you in another video.